Welcome to Hub Church. This October, we're diving into our brand new series, The Grace Effect. See, grace isn't just about forgiveness. It's God's power at work in our lives every single day. When we truly experience grace, it reshapes how we see ourselves, how we love others, and how we live with hope. We'd love for you to be a part of this journey. And if this message encourages you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a single message. This is The Grace Effect.
I encourage you today, we are in a series, and this is the final, I guess you could say the final series of the sermon of the series. I don't know, I may continue on at another time, but the grace effect has been such a good time for me because it was a real time of understanding what God has done for us. And grace doesn't always remove pain. It doesn't. It doesn't do that. But it gives you strength to press through it. When we are weak, that's often when grace is best, when it works best. Your weakest moment might be where God does his greatest work. Sometimes we think that if we've got grace in our lives, everything should feel like a walk in the park. You know, there's birds chirping, the sun is shining, kind of like today, and maybe even a gentle breeze. But the truth is, grace doesn't always make the pain disappear like some kind of spiritual painkiller. What it does do, though, is help us keep going when we feel like curling up in a blanket burrito and calling it a day. Anybody ever feel like that, In fact, it's usually when we're at our lowest, when we're tired, when we're overwhelmed, and wondering if it's socially acceptable to cry in the cereal aisle, that grace really kicks in. It's in those moments. It's like God looks at our mess and says, perfect. Now I can work with this. In Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15, it says this, and this is something that I have looked at and for many years just loved the fact that this was the heart of God. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. See, God's gone through everything, and he knows everything that we're going through. And he can sympathize with where we're at. So if you're feeling weak, don't panic. You might just be standing at the starting line of something amazing. Grace doesn't always make things easy, but it sure knows how to make them possible. Okay? Let me give you a possible scenario where grace steps in. Tom is a college student. He's trying to finish his final semester. He's working part-time, taking a full course load, and living off instant noodles like it's another food group. Just when he thinks he's got it and he's managing everything well, his laptop crashes the night before a big paper is due, and he's been working on it for 2 months. And he loses everything. At that moment, he feels completely defeated, like the universe is personally out to get him. He sits there, staring at the blank screen, wondering if he should drop out of school and become a llama farmer in Peru. But instead, he takes a deep breath, says a quick prayer that may or may not include some desperate bargaining, and starts over. Friends pitch in to help. A professor gives him an extension, and somehow he finishes the paper. Tom didn't suddenly get a new laptop or a magical burst of genius, but he found the strength to press through even when he felt like quitting. That's grace. It didn't erase the problem, but it gave him just enough strength, enough support, and maybe a little humor to get through it. Sometimes grace shows up not with fireworks, but with a cup of coffee and a friend who says, "You've got this." 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 9, Paul says this, and he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." That's not something that I'm excited about, boasting in my infirmities. But it is something that Paul said. In other words, he's saying God's grace is strong, it's strongest despite my weakness because of it. My first point today is grace doesn't always mean escape. Sometimes it means endurance. Paul was probably one of the most spiritual heavyweights in the Bible. Through some of the most serious struggles he had in life, he was continued faithful. He wasn't just dealing with a bad day when he heard the statement, "My grace is enough," or a flat tire. He had what he called a thorn in the flesh. We don't know exactly what it was. Some think that it was physical, others think emotional or spiritual. But whatever it was, it bothered him enough that he begged God 3 times to take it away. And God said no. God said no. Now, if anyone deserved probably a spiritual fast pass out of suffering, it was probably Paul. I mean, the guy wrote over half of the New Testament. He got shipwrecked, beaten, and imprisoned more times than most of us go to the dentist. But instead of removing the problem, God gave Paul something else. He gave him grace. Not the sparkly, float on clouds kind of grace, but the gritty, hang on when you want to quit kind. God basically said, "My grace is enough. My strength shows up best when you're weak." How many of you like to hear that? You know, God, do I have to be broken down to be that weak? But that's the way it is. And honestly, that's not the answer most of us want to hear. We'd prefer a miracle, a quick fix, or at least a divine skip button, right? Don't you wish you had one of those, you know? But sometimes instead of pulling us out of the storm, God gives us the strength to keep walking through it with the umbrella flipping out inside out. You know, He's there for us. And let us bring it into everyday life, though. Picture a guy. His name's Dave, okay? He's trying to balance work. He's trying to balance work and parenting and the fact that his car now makes a sound that can only be described as an angry lawnmower. He's praying for God to fix it all, to make life easier, smoother, quieter. But instead of instant solutions, what Dave gets is the strength to wake up the next day and try again. He gets patience when he's running on fumes, a kind word from a friend when he's about to lose it, and just enough peace to not yell at the printer. That's grace. It may not change the situation, but it changes you in the middle of it. See, God's more interested in you than He is in all the things that you're going through. He wants your heart. And so many times we have to go through stuff for Him to get our heart. So yes, sometimes God says no to the escape plan, but He always says yes to grace. He always says yes to grace. And that grace, it might not look flashy, but it's the kind that holds you up when you feel like everything's falling apart. And that, my friend, is a quiet miracle all on its own, that it can hold you up. Some of us want grace to be like Domino's delivery, 30 minutes or less, hot and satisfying. But grace is more like a crock-pot, slow-cooked stew. It simmers. You can smell it for quite a while. It sustains and strengthens over time. My second point today is weakness isn't failure. when God is in it. It's not a failure when God's in it. We all do it. We try to put our best foot forward, even if that foot is held together with duct tape and a prayer. We post carefully filtered photos, say the right things, and act like we've got it all together. It's like we're all walking around with our own personal highlights reel, hoping no one really notices the blooper reel playing in the background. But here's the thing. God's not sitting up in heaven scrolling through your Instagram feed going, wow, look at that lighting. Now I can use them. He's not impressed by your perfect moments. In fact, he tends to do his best work in the messy, the unfiltered, behind the scenes parts of your life, the parts you'd never post online, the parts you don't want to tell anybody about. Think about it like this. Imagine you're at a job interview and you're doing your best to sound competent. You're using big words like synergy and proactive, even though you just Googled them that morning. But then the interviewer asks you about a time you made a mistake. And you tell the story of how you accidentally emailed your grocery list to your boss instead of the sales report. You brace for judgment, but instead the interviewer laughs and says, that's relatable. We've all done it. That's the kind of how God works. He's not looking for perfection. He's not. He's looking for honesty. He already knows about the flaws, the failures, the fears, and he's not running away. In fact, he often uses those very things to show his strength and grace. So go ahead and drop the act. You don't have to pretend with God. He's not waiting for your polished performance. He's ready to work through your bloopers. And honestly, that's where the real story begins. In Isaiah 40 and verse 29, it says this, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. If God only picked strong, flawless people, the Bible would be a very short book. Thankfully, he doesn't work that way. One of the greatest examples that we have is Moses. And when you think of Moses, we picture the guy parting the Red Sea. You know, we've seen it on TV. He parted the Red Sea and he got the 10 Commandments and leading an entire nation out of slavery. Sounds like a superhero, right? But rewind to the beginning of his story and you'll see someone who definitely didn't feel strong. When God called Moses from the burning bush and told him to go speak to Pharaoh, Moses basically said, you got the wrong guy. You got the wrong man. He gave every excuse that he could think of. He wasn't a good speaker. He didn't feel qualified, and he was terrified. At one point, he literally said, please send someone else. Not exactly the confidence you'd expect from a future leader of millions. But God didn't choose Moses because he was eloquent or fearless. He chose him because he could work through Moses' weaknesses. And he did. God gave him the strength, the words, and the help that he needed. Shout out to Aaron, the very first wingman. So if you ever feel like you're not strong enough, not smart enough, or not spiritual enough, join the crowd. You know, congratulations. You're in great company. God's not looking for the strongest. He's looking for the willing. And that's where the real strength comes from, when we're willing. Don't be the person who glues their broken coffee mug back together just to prove it still works, even though it leaks every time you take a sip. It's okay to admit that you're cracked. It's okay. You know, grace leaks through broken people. Grace leaks through broken people. My third point is that grace gives you confidence without pretending. You no longer have to pretend you're okay just to look spiritual. You don't. Grace gives you permission to drop the act. Take off the mask and say, yep, I'm struggling a bit today. And that's okay. We've all been there. Smiling through gritted teeth at church, nodding along with the small group leader while secretly wondering if it's acceptable to eat an entire cheesecake by yourself. The truth is, grace says yes, but you probably ought to share it. The truth is, pretending to be okay doesn't make us more spiritual. It just makes us more tired. It really does. Grace lets us be real with others, messy, honest, and human, and lean fully on God instead of our own strength. It's like finally admitting you don't know how to assemble the IKEA bookshelf and calling someone who actually reads the instructions. God's not impressed by your spiritual performance. He's moved by your dependence on Him. It's me leaning on the everlasting love of the Lord. There are times when you look around and you go, God, I have not got it together today. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is here. Help. And that's exactly where He wants you to be. And that's when His grace steps in and says, hey, I'm sufficient. I'll help you through this. I'll help you make the right decision. Paul understood this better than anyone. He didn't hide his weaknesses. He bragged about them. Not in a weird, look how broken I am way, but because he knew that when he hit rock bottom, that's when God's power really kicked in. In 2 Corinthians, Paul basically says, I'll boast in my weakness because that's where God's strength shows up. That's not just perspective. That's freedom. It's freedom. When you don't feel that you have to perform and you recognize that it's in my weakness. It's when I can't make it, when I have no idea what to do. And believe me, we all have those moments, don't we? I don't know what to do, you know? Your child's not living for God, and you're like, God, how do I reach them? What do I got to say? How do I got to do this? What is it that will make them turn to you? And you don't have an answer, but His grace is enough. You look at life and you look at the situations that you're going through, the pain that you're in every day. Maybe you're dealing with a physical ailment or you're dealing with some other loss in your life, and you're looking at it and you're going, God, I don't know how to deal with this. And that's when the presence of God comes in and says, my grace is enough. I don't know how many times that I've been in those situations where I didn't know what the answer was. And I would go into His Word, and His Word would start to speak life to me. I'd get something out of the Word, and it would come alive to me. And all of a sudden, that thing that I was so concerned about wasn't so big anymore. His truth came in and set me free from feeling like I was caught by that thing. His grace is enough. Think about it like this. Imagine you're at the gym. Now imagine that, okay? Stay with me, okay? Imagine it. And everyone around you is lifting heavy weights like it's nothing. Meanwhile, you're over in the corner trying to figure out how to adjust the bench without pinching your fingers. Been there, done that. You could pretend you've got it all together. Or you could ask for help, learn, and grow. Grace is like the personal trainer who doesn't laugh when you drop the dumbbell, but instead says, great, now let's build from here. Grace takes your shame, that stuff you'd rather hide, and turns it into a stage for God's glory. It's like God saying, oh, you think that part disqualifies you? Every single one of us has something in our lives that we think disqualifies us, don't we? Don't we? We all do. And if you sit there long enough, the enemy will convince you that you're not qualified. But the truth is, yes, I've made lots of mistakes, and I am not qualified. But God says, that's why I want you. Because it's in your inability that I show you my ability. It's when we recognize that it's not in my own strength, but it's in His strength that I can become what He's called me to be. It's not because I'm brilliant. It's not because I've done this for so long. I may think about it. I've been a pastor for, 30, 40 years, something like that. Well, you got it together. You should know it all. Well, the truth is, I don't know anything. I can't do it without Him. And the truth is, when we get to the point where we recognize that without Him, we are not going to make it. I don't know what your career is or what you're in, but it will be so much better when you allow Jesus Christ to lead you and to guide you and to give you direction. Whatever it is that you're in right now, some of you probably got some major decisions you've got to make this week. Invite Jesus. Ask Him, because His grace is enough. He will help you. In your weakness, He'll be strong. He says, it's in those weak areas, that's where I want to shine. So instead of hiding your struggles, let them be the backdrop for His strength. Because when people see you clinging to God in the middle of the mess, they don't see weakness. They see grace in action. It's when we cling to Him in the middle of our mess and people see that we are hanging on to God, that it's not in us, but it's in our relationship with Him, that they recognize there is something greater in you and me. And honestly, that's the way more powerful than, it's a far more powerful way than pretending you've got it all figured out. None of us have it all figured out. Grace gives you confidence without pretending. Here's a biblical example that fits this point. John chapter 4, the woman at the well. The woman comes to draw water alone in the heat of the day. Likely, she's avoiding the judgmental stares and the whispers of others. She's carrying shame. She's carrying brokenness and a past she probably, wishes she could hide. Then Jesus shows up. He doesn't avoid her. He doesn't condemn her or ask her to clean herself up first. Instead, He engages her in conversation, reveals that He knows her story, all of it, and still offers her living water. What's amazing is that after this encounter, she doesn't run away to hide. She runs into town and tells everyone, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." She's not pretending anymore, is she? She's not hiding anymore. She's not even trying to look spiritual. She's just real. And that authenticity becomes the very thing God uses to spark revival in her community. Grace gave her the confidence to stop pretending. She didn't need to act like she had it all together. She met Jesus, and that was enough. Her story was cleaned up. It wasn't cleaned up. It was redeemed. And that's what grace does. It redeems us. It doesn't require perfection. It just invites honesty. It takes the parts of us we'd rather hide and uses them to show the world how good God really is. So when we stop performing and start being real, like this woman did, grace turns our mess into a message. And that's far more powerful than pretending we're fine. Some of us have been putting on a brave face while falling apart inside. We're praying for God to remove the problem, but maybe what we need is grace to walk through it. Today, bring your weaknesses, your exhaustion, your doubts. His grace is sufficient. It is. Don't leave empty when God's offering you power for your pain. Stand with me today. I want to invite you today to surrender your struggle. I want to open the altar today to anyone who's never received the grace of salvation, but also this is the moment to stop faking it and allow the strength of His grace to come into your life. Whatever you're dealing with in life, there may be a difficult season that you're in right now. Maybe you don't understand what it is and why it's there. And you may be saying, God, I don't have the strength to get through this. That's why the body of Christ is here. Because we're here to encourage you. We're here to strengthen you. Maybe you're dealing with something at home that's just really hard and you need help. We're here to pray with you. We're here to encourage you, to strengthen you. God wants to do something amazing in your life. And let me encourage you today. Don't leave this place in pain. If you're dealing with something, get help. If there's something that's difficult for you, I encourage you. We're here to help you. We're here to pray for you because we believe in a God that does miracles. I believe that God is more than enough to be able to help you through every situation that you're dealing with. It might be a mother-in-law, it might be a father-in-law, it might be a brother or a sister, or it might be a physical issue that you're dealing with. But I know God is able. He's more than able to help you through it. So I encourage you, if there is something in your heart, right now you're feeling it, you're feeling this, well, I don't want to go up there because everybody's going to look at me. You know what? Nobody's going to look at you. God wants to help. God wants to be that one that you can be. His grace is enough.